I appreciate you, the Idaho chapter having us out here. It's a lot of fun to be able to tell stories. The podcast was something we did about 5 years ago. My main company is called Freedom HealthWorks. We're a DPC startup platform helping as many physicians as we possibly can get started in this type of great industry. And so we started telling stories because we were so wanting for information and headlines really talking about what this industry was actually doing. It was all doom and gloom. Everything. This is pre-COVID. Everything healthcare related was doom and gloom. High premiums. Nobody has any solutions. We're beating our heads against the wall. It is the definition of insanity. And so we just started recording conversations. And I look back at those first 10 episodes. I'm like, man, those really sucked. But we got through it. And so we're still doing it. And people still listen. People still tune in, which is great. It's opened up a lot of doors. So super happy to be here talking to a lot of these different experts. So like Sheridan said, if you have any questions, we'll open up some Q&A towards the end of our little talk here. Write them down. One thing I've learned doing conferences is to never, ever give a microphone to an audience member. So no offense to anybody out there. But yeah, with that, I will start, Dr. Story, with you since, a lot of the talk is still very, very fresh. Listening to what you were saying, you mentioned something about, for the first time, primary care physicians are able to inject personality into their practices. I want you to expand a little bit on that and then, kind of get everybody's take along here. When you're just a commodity in the hospital, you're a white coat and a stethoscope, and that's about it. And a name on a list on a website somewhere. Give us some idea of what that looks like compared to what you're able to do, and how primary care is actually a specialty, not just a commodity.
That's an interesting question. I appreciate it. Working as a hospital physician, ER physician, it was actually kind of a joy to come in sometimes on the heels of working with other colleagues and bring my own personality, my own kind of joy in medicine, and sometimes surprise people by just being present, being kind, being thorough, and going, wow, thank you. You're kind of a different, and it's great to have that freedom to just kind of fly under the radar. When you run your own business, that you can't help but have that personality, flavor carry through to what you do. Not only in how you practice, but the kind of people that respond to it. So like I said earlier, even within our practice, we have 4 full-time providers that have their own patient panel, and each one is very different and attracts that. And by and large, it's personality. And that's actually kind of a sweet thing. You can't help but find connections, find meaning, find purpose through being in it. And it's essential to who you are as a human. For us, in large part, that carries over from other things like our faith and being able to be able to speak and share openly about how that impacts our decision making, what we see of value, things that we think are important to talk about in medicine that we think is broken culturally, and so being able to actually have the freedom in our business to do that. In our community, we have multiple DPCs, and each one has a different flavor and attracts a different group. And actually, we think that's actually very organic, so different than what I think generally you get in the medical world, where it's in network and who's available. And boy, I hope you like that person, because actually I think it does give better care when you connect with people and when that doctor can be true and offer not just good medicine, but actually humanity attached to it.
Yeah, great call. I know I started out as a family medicine physician in the Air Force for some years, and then I came out and we came to Spokane here, and I worked for the big medical company for a good 8 years, and then thought, no, we're going to do something different. Because even within that big medical company, when you try to make your efforts, like I think most providers do, to put some stamp on your way of practicing, I did different interventions where I would schedule differently so I could have more access for my patients, and I would put up that wall, and I'd really try to advocate for them. but I found that it was very difficult within the system, so to speak. So I made the decision after seeing all these pioneers in the movement. I know Dr. Story was one of them. I kept an ear out for too, and I thought, I can do that. And then you start doing it, and it's like, this is hard to begin with, because you have to fight against a lot of things in the community, whatever is your personal hill. But then the benefit is that you start developing these relationships with your patients. So I had some of my same patients that I knew before move over to me, and in this new practice, and I was just able to have a better connection with them. And then just like Dr. Story, I have people through church that, come and see me that way. And I have people through this community network that come and see me that way. Or I have the new DPC docs in town start talking to me about things. And it's just a totally different mindset. And you just feel like you're back to the one, who was it that said we're going back to 1955, we're making progress. That's what it felt like to me. My grandpa was a physician, and he was a general practice doc way back when, and he knew everyone in town. I'm getting there, but not quite there yet.
Now Zach, I'm gonna, is this on? Sorry. Hello? I'll just talk. So, Zach, I'm curious from your experience, again, Dr. Story, you mentioned this before, this divide between DPC world of MDs versus nurse practitioners. I want to get your take on it from where you are, where you sit, and the kind of the conversations that you've been having amongst the industry and peers.
I'm glad you asked that question. I don't have to cower in the corner for being a nurse practitioner. I actually bought a DPC clinic from a retiring physician, Dr. Haney. He lives in Sandpoint now. He moved to Sandpoint from Ellensburg, Washington, and I texted him and asked him if he was going to be here, but he didn't make it. So anyways, there is a lot out there about DPC clinics are traditionally physician-run and physician-led, and that's excellent, but in our situation, Dr. Haney had a hard time selling his practice. He was really looking for a physician to buy the practice, and he couldn't find one. And I kept telling him, Byron, like, if you want to sell this practice, I'll buy it from you. And he eventually came back and said he was really worried about selling it to me, worried that the practice would be successful without having a physician in the office. And it was really interesting because DPC is so relational that Dr. Haney is 67, I'm 36, but we're very similar in personalities. And so I took over a lot of his patients when I started. He had background in agriculture. I had background in agriculture, and so I'm taking care of his, 60, 70, 80-year-old gentleman who he and we're hitting it off just like Byron and those patients hit it off for 30-some years while he was practicing in Ellensburg. So I had a unique situation as far as how I started into direct primary care with that. But there are perceptions of nurse practitioners that are going to be really varied. I think the biggest thing is, just as with any subspecialty or anybody you work with in life, right? Like, you're going to meet people who are outstanding clinicians, and you're going to meet people who you just assume, your loved one maybe didn't see that person. And so being relational, being genuine, and really going the extra mile for patients, communicating clearly. If you're not personal and communicating clearly with patients, showing them that you care, you're going to struggle in DPC. If you're going to practice the same way that you practiced in the traditional model, kind of as a referral quarterback in a large health system, that's not going to do well in DPC. They want to come see you, and they trust you, and they want you to give them your input. So I think for me as a nurse practitioner, we wondered if we were going to lose a bunch of patients when I bought the practice, and we didn't. I bought it at about 1,100 patients, and we're 2,300 now. So.
What I like about your story, I figured out how to use the microphone, by the way, so there's a win. I blame it on the time change every time. What I like about that is you've highlighted the importance of succession planning when it comes to not just DPC, but small businesses in general. And this is such a new kind of a nascent industry that there are multiple avenues to get into practice. Dr. Story, you mentioned that, hey, you bootstrapped this thing and built it up with your own two hands doing demo work. That is an avenue to get in there. You can go out and acquire a practice, and there's practices all over the country right now that are desperate, absolutely desperate to hire new physicians on. From our experience, like the vast majority of DPC practices are late career physicians. And so they're looking for successors. They're looking for people that they can pass on 30 years of experience onto, I dare say, kind of an apprentice type of a situation there. So you can look into hiring existing practices. You can look at bootstrapping it. You can buy existing practices. Dr. Cranney, I would like to hear how you got into practice as well. See if that's anything I just said makes sense or is relative to what you experienced as well.
No, that's totally applicable right now, because when I started out, it's like it was just me. So it's like, okay, I went, got a loan from the bank. I found a place. I put money down. I put money into it. And so it was a fair financial investment. And then when you start, you only have 60 patients or so, and you're moonlighting all the time and doing all those things. So now I'm full, and I have a side job that I do flight medicine as well too. So that's really filled up too. And so I was desperately looking for, like you said, that next person to come on in the practice at all. And so luckily I put a feeler out to all the other DPC docs in town. And what I really was trying to tell them is, if anyone else is considering coming into this sphere and working in this, I have a great opportunity, I thought, that you can come in, we'll just share costs initially, and we'll have, and we can set up a different financial arrangement where a physician that really wants to do this can come in and start making a little bit of money right off the bat, kind of basically, and not have to put in that big investment, and can build and grow. And there's different ways to incentivize that too. So we did that. And so I got my first colleague, Dr. Briscoe, here in April. And I just tell you, that made all the difference, because now, like Dr. Story was saying, it's like, wow, I have someone else that I can talk to in the office, and it's not just me in the corner by myself going, what should I do with this? And then, I always was very nice with my patients. It would let me go on vacations and be happy about it. But now I can go on vacations and they still get care if something did come up. It just made all the difference. And then to your question about succession planning, it's like, I think, honestly, you can definitely get someone from outside that recognizes the value of that. But I think it's also such a great opportunity to get younger people into your practice working at it. And then maybe when the time comes, they can see the value, they can see how it works. And they would probably also be probably you're first in line to say, maybe I do want to buy this. Maybe I do want to get into this. And it could be an opportunity that way.
Succession planning is important. I think that the reality is that most family physicians that have been independent have been desperate to sell their practice and realize that nobody's buying those anymore except the hospital system. We lost the last independent family medicine clinic in our community, just got purchased by the hospital.
And there is a different definition of selling out to a hospital between what Zach was talking about purchasing too. So
correct.
I do want to be clear about that. A lot of times, if you sell to a hospital, you're just signing on as an employee and handing away your revenue stream.
Well, that's the change, and that has been the reality, that if you're an independent family medical practice, it's almost impossible to negotiate for a good rate. Mm-hmm. You're getting killed out there, and it's hard to bill and get receivables. And why I think the DPC makes all the difference is we have real numbers. We really are. We can show you exactly the balance of our sheet. If we were losing money, we would make a change, either offer a service different or renegotiate. Something would have to change. We couldn't just keep going like that, like many medical clinics are just forced to do. So that we do hope to be able to say, hey, we have something that actually isn't just provided for us while we've been employed by it, but actually is something worth handing to the next generation. It's actually something of value.
I want to talk about more of the human element at this point in time. As independent business owners, as DPC NPs, as DPC physicians, you're going to hear the word no from patients, from prospects, from banks, it's probably something that most physicians don't hear about in a hospital situation. You're handed these patients and they say just, hey, here you go, and don't ask questions. Zach, from your standpoint, when you bought a practice and you're talking to patients and you're saying, hey, I'm going to be taking care of you, there's an emotional component there where you're hearing the word no for the first time, or people are electing to leave the practice. Talk about that emotionally when you kind of have to steel yourself as a salesperson. That's one of the best, one of the first skills you use as a salesperson in any field. But when you start hearing no to people, did you take it personally?
I felt a heavy responsibility taking over Dr. Haney's practice because he had done a really good job for a lot of years in Ellensburg. And, he switched it to DPC for about a year or two before I bought the practice. And I just felt a large weight. Like I'm filling big shoes here. Dr. Haney did a great job and I'm taking care of his patients. There's some heavy, complicated patients and wanting to live up to the expectation, wanting to provide good care, wanting to provide the value. I mean, these people are paying us a monthly membership and I need to meet their expectations or exceed their expectations. And so I didn't hear no a lot from patients. I heard no from people who didn't get DPC yet, but as the light bulb starts to go on with DPC, there was a lot of yeses. There was like, wow, that you can provide that value. There were some patients, who missed Dr. Haney, and he would come back to town, and they'd give him hugs and things like that. But no, I didn't really hear no from patients a lot. I heard no from banks when I bought the clinic from Dr. Haney. He had to fund it. Dr. Haney did. So we just started making payments to him. So you had to get creative about that because I don't know if there's been a lot of purchase and sales of DPC clinics, and a lot of big banks, like they don't get that. They want to see insurance revenues or contracts and things like that. So that was kind of unique. But I think, I don't think I had a lot of no's from patients so much, honestly.
Dr. Cranney, you mentioned you're an FAA examiner. I think I actually sat next to one of your pilots on the flight out here. He flew for FedEx and was like, yeah, this guy, crazy guy, opened up this new practice in Spokane. He's one of the only FAA guys out of here. FAA is one thing that we will advocate for that from an ancillary service, but even Dr. Story mentioned before that we've seen so many practices get in this debt trap by buying expensive lasers and saying, hey, all these people are going to run through my doors, and they don't focus on the membership. Curious from your standpoint, how did you identify becoming an FA in kind of having monopoly on that from an ancillary service, and then what that does as far as supporting your membership foundation?
Yeah, so I was in the Air National Guard for Washington. I was in the Air Force to begin with, and in the Air National Guard, I got trained as a flight surgeon, so I had kind of that part of the credentialing. So when I got out and separated in 2023, I thought, how do I use this? So I put my toe into the FAA examiner realm, and just through a chain of events, and it was tragic actually because they had an FAA examiner here in Coeur d'Alene that passed away right about that same time. So there was this group of pilots that needed some stuff. So through providence and through luck and trying to work with their family as well, that came into my lap as just the right thing at the right time. So trying to balance that out, it was a low-cost investment option that I had. It was a niche, and it was kind of a protected type of income stream too. And then I had to balance out, how do I balance this with the patients I have? Because I want to keep providing good and excellent primary care and be able to be responsive to my now pilot population too. So my personal solution was I just took 3 hours each day and alternated them evening and morning. And I said, okay, those 3 hours are for my FA, for my pilots, and the rest of the day is for my DPC patients. And it's worked out. So I have access every day of the week for pilots, and I have access every day of the week for my patients. And I don't fill all of my patient appointments typically. And then I listen, right? And I listen, and they say, are my patients being happy? Are they feeling like they can't get in to see me? Are my pilots happy? Are they feeling like they can't get in to see me? And just responding and being your own boss. That's what you get to do. So, and about being said no to, you're right. I didn't have a lot of being said no to. There are patients that, like you said, they're going to move. They lost their job. They got a new insurance plan. They found out. And so I just try to really take it from the mind of this relationship is a good thing for both of us. And if it's not a good thing for you anymore, I have no animus against that. And I'm happy. And usually we always try and tell them on the way out the door, we're so happy and grateful that we were able to provide that care for you. We really enjoyed our time and wishing you the best, and let us know how we can help you going further. And if you keep that mindset with people, they're coming in the door, they're going out the door, and how long they stay is a blessing. That's really what I say.
A reminder, if you have any questions, write them down. Sheridan in the back right there is waving his hand. He can grab those from you. So any questions for our panel, we'll leave some time here to be able to go ahead and answer those. Dr. Story, my question for you, looking at your experience, your career, from hospital to independent practice, today, how do you define the term quality care? And does that differ from what it was years ago?
I think the quality and time are really like essential in my mind. All of us are really well trained. You didn't go to this to be a slipshod, backstreet, mail order doctor. I mean, that's not even an option. It's a very high opportunity, and nurse practitioners and a PA, I see the same excellence generally across the board. The ability to spend time with people and then being free to do that turns out to be the quality that we really want to. And I see that in the people that we've invited to our practice who have joined me. That when you create that structure, which DPC seems to be, and I'm not an evangelist for DPC. We have many other things that we think are even more important, but it sure has been a great structure for us to do that.
What I always give physicians a hard time with if they're in the insurance world, and this is out of the words of a chief medical officer. One time I asked a chief medical officer of a hospital, I go, "What do you actually do?" And he was actually honest with me. He goes, "Well, I'm a liaison quality medicine." I go, "How do you define quality?" And he laughed. He goes, "It's whatever the hell Anthem and United tell us it is."
Oh. Yeah. Ouch.
That's why I love watching. Listen, I ask that question on the podcast all the time. And it's kind of like I hit that buzzer every time anybody hits the Q word, because what you just said, quality equals time with patients. Every single physician who practices in a membership-based, whether that's concierge or DPC or direct pay, there's a million different names for it across the country. They all say time spent face-to-face with a person. Not the time that somebody spends in my office, that's terrible, but the time spent face-to-face. So I didn't try to set you up there. We didn't rehearse that ahead of time, but I'm glad that worked out from that standpoint.
And even then, 30, 45 minutes, still never enough time. But I usually say, well, I have someone else that I want to give time to. Oh, okay. I don't want to cut them off. I'm really thankful that people are generous that way.
I don't know if I can even jump in. The other piece of it is you think about, those are always quality metrics. It's a number, it's a thing like that. Yeah. And I found in DPC, a lot of times I'm not as concerned about saying, oh, this person's blood pressure is at this particular number, that particular number. If I know the person and I've got them down to as good as we're going to get, and they keep coming back to me, we've got a positive thing going here. And if no one else takes care of them because they don't make their metrics look good, it's like, that's not really good. That's not the way you do healthcare here. You're trying to help patients and people, and not necessarily just a number. But
so you don't have a certain percentage of patients that have to be on statins, or else you don't make as much money. Zach, curious, from your standpoint, going into a practice again, like your situation is super unique. And I think it could be a very leading argument for a lot of people who want to go into practice. Like we said, just different avenues to be able to get that. What is your really recommendation? What's your advice for not just nurse practitioners, but physicians who are interested in this, but are actually having a hard time connecting with different practices, really across the U.S., because there's a lot of practices that operate in silos, and there's a big challenge to be able to connect these types of practices, because this type of independent practice can be very lonely.
Absolutely. I think that in general, people who are physicians, PAs, NPs, they tend to be a little risk averse, and so they may get a lot of training, get a lot of education, and then they want to go work for a large health system just because it's kind of all they know, and it feels safe to them. Like, I'm going to have a steady paycheck, I'm going to have it, and so not being afraid of the risk of DPC, because the reward is way, way better than what the reward would be in the traditional health model, with regard to burnout, patient outcomes, your quality of life, your family's quality of life, all those things. So that's one thing. And then like somebody already mentioned, the number of DPC clinics that spring up from physicians who are totally burned out in the traditional model, and they're in their 50s or 60s. And so they need replacements. They need people to come alongside them. And who better to mentor you? Like, I really wish I could have worked with Dr. Haney a few more years. As an example, circumcisions. We have all the stuff to do circs in our clinic, but I wasn't trained how to do it. So I don't do circs. If I'd worked with Dr. Haney for a few years, we'd still be doing circs in our clinic, and we wouldn't be sending patients to anywhere else to do that. So it'd be another value that we could add in our clinic. Same thing with vasectomies. So there are a lot of DPC docs that are nearing the retirement years who are looking for someone. So if you're a young physician or APP in residency or getting out of school, don't feel like you have to be just married to the system, because there are a lot better options.
So I'm getting to the end of my questions, and we'll take some audience questions here. I do want to touch upon two subjects that we've been talking about: specialists and employers. Dr. Story, from your standpoint, working with a lot of employers, any tips, tricks? Not tricks. That's probably the wrong word. But any tips to really walk into an employer's office and say, "Hey, you need to send your people here." What is your kind of handout look like? What can other doctors do to engage with their local community, even if they're not world-beating salespeople?
I think that's actually a question that we're beginning to ask, because most of our employee or employer growth has been natural out of people that we were caring for. So we were caring for a family, and then happened to have a conversation in our office. Hey, don't you have a business? What do you guys do for your business? What do you do for your employees? Oh, this and that, or we can't really afford anything. And the conversation was natural out of that, as to a relationship that I already had with a patient. Cold going in is harder. I mean, the reality is that steering a ship, and then we're coming up on this, crazy October where everybody's kind of considering what they're doing insurance-wise. It takes 2, often 3 years to have a conversation with an employer before they have the aha moment. We have a small college in our town that it was like years of planting that seed. We have a business that it was 4 years, 5, 6 years actually, and 2 businesses changed for the CEO before he was like, oh, now I get it. It's a long sell. At the same time, it is part of a relationship that we're building in the community, and none of this actually turns out to be cold. I don't know how it goes in Spokane. We're a small town, and so I run into people all the time, and because you can't avoid people in Moscow. But maybe in Spokane it's a little more challenging. What's it like for you?
Yeah, that's usually all of any employer kind of interest right now have been my patients, and so I still am in that feeder time, right? So I've done workshops, I've done kind of telemed. I brought broker folks in to tell them about the different things, but doing it in a way that it's educational. It's not like if you come to this and you don't sign up that I'm going to be upset or something like that. I think it's just part of the care part, because I think the care of your patients, yes, goes for their physical health care, but I just think this is such a financial health care financial care type of issue that it's like, yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm energized about it. So when I have the chance to talk with my patients who own businesses and who have those types of things, I think it's a great thing. So I'm not shy about asking the questions and inviting people to learn more.
I like what you said there, that it is a long sales cycle. I think a lot of people, and people even in the room, when they're starting, these DPC practices, they think, hey, this panacea, this silver bullet, I'm gonna go out and get all these employer lives overnight. In reality, you're looking at a 2, 3, 6 year sales cycle that is very expensive. I think the point taken from that is that you've got to focus on what's right in front of your face. Small towns tend to do better than large metropolises that have a lot of competition. Urban DPC is tough because you've got 2 or 3 hospital systems that are also competing there, where you might have a monopoly on a small town because rural healthcare is absolutely vanishing in this country.
And Chris, I would add that it's really not until there's significant pain, honestly, that people come. DPC is whether physicians finally jump. They almost have to be pushed, but then the ledge has to be crumbling at the same time. Like it's really scary to jump. And we were like, No, but it scales, and it's so straightforward, and you get to practice excellent care. And the same is in the health in the self-funding arena. It's until an employer is facing massive pain or their business is struggling because they're having to, their second biggest cost is just ballooning like crazy. It's very hard to have that conversation. It's basically has to be from a point of pain. And then that's a great thing. We're working a lot with things similar to what Kempton is doing and starting a comprehensive package that builds on top of a DPC and marries it to Veritas and is creating a catastrophic backstop that is very approachable for small businesses, and hoping that is also a way of talking to businesses who are looking for a need to talk about something bigger.
Sharon, were there any audience questions?
I didn't get any, so we can ask if there's anything in the audience.
We did such a good job up here. Good job, everybody. So I do have a question. So obviously with Veritas and obviously with Surgery Center of Oklahoma, there's a great surgery center in Indianapolis called Wellbridge Surgical that is one of the pop-ups here. I want to talk about referrals. I don't think it's a mystery that everybody in this industry who's interested in charging good old-fashioned U.S. dollars and cents is interested in kind of rebuilding this pyramid of healthcare because it got too top-heavy. All of our time and resources were at the top during surgeries and these niche specialties. All the physicians and all the medical students want to go in these subspecialties because that's where they perceive the dollars are being. We push that pyramid over. We build a new foundation of primary care. We're not quite there yet. At what point in time do local communities start to rebuild this pipeline that says, hey, we do have enough primary care in Moscow, Idaho? When do you start looking at saying, hey, we actually need more specialty here, with the understanding that specialists are now jealous of primary care for the first time in their careers?
So in Ellensburg, we have critical access hospital. We have one neurologist, one cardiologist, no cath lab, limited surgical capabilities, and send a lot to Seattle or Yakima area. So we definitely need more subspecialties. But one of the issues is that primary care in the traditional model, when you have 10 minutes or 15 minutes with a patient and somebody's got abdominal pain, they just get sent to GI where they don't get seen for so long. And so what we found in DPC that just keeps feeding us is that we're able to spend the time with the patient and help get to the root of the problem instead of just sending them away. And they feel heard, they feel cared for, and we always have wondered, could some of the subspecialties do a DPC model? I have a good friend who's a general surgeon, and he's just totally intrigued by DPC in primary care, wondering if he could make something like that work in little old Ellensburg. He's not there yet. He's got 11 kids, so he might have to wait a little while. but yeah, it's a problem. And I think the biggest thing for us as DPC clinics is that we try to keep as much in-house as we can, and we'll use resources like University of Washington has a psychiatry line where I can get a psychiatrist on the phone and get a consult for a patient without waiting for that patient to go see a psychiatrist, which may never happen. Likely we don't have a psychiatrist in our county, so yeah.
In with like mental health, that kind of stuff, like we see people where we're abusing specialists right now because we're treating our primary care providers and physicians as very expensive triage.
Yeah, just back to your need for specialists, definitely. I know I've spoken with a rheumatologist and some other folks that are probably going to start their own stuff in Spokane area, which would be great. I know the DPC pioneers in the system. I know Atlas has the whole the consults that you can do across the nation where people are offering their cash-based consultations with all the specialists that you could have medical-wise. And then you have places like Veritas and Surgery Center of Oklahoma there. I know I sent one patient to Surgery Center of Oklahoma because he had a high deductible plan. So his surgery came in about half of his deductible, let alone anything else. So he goes, yeah, he's a pilot and I'll fly out to Oklahoma. So he got it done there. That was before Veritas was up and running, by the way. So yeah, we're constantly shopping around for those things, and there's definitely a need. Not only is there a need for the direct, for sure, there's already a need. So if you have that direct option as a steam valve, pressure valve to let off, that would just be great.
Yeah, Dr. Story, you give us the last word, and then if there's no more audience questions, then we'll thank these individuals for their time.
We're 8.5 years into this. We came to a DPC conference called Nuts to Bolts. It was in Orlando. We heard about it and we're like, is this real? Orlando, the worst thing that could be will end up at Disney World. Fantastic conference. One of the things that we found there was how we had never seen doctors who were actually happy and willing to talk to each other. Like they were like, hey, I'm doing this, and have you heard about that? And there's something starting over here, and it's continued. We have in our little town, first DPC, we've seen now 4 in our area, and blowing up around the United States. But that's just one part of an ecosystem. I don't know a better word for it, but now, like we've got a breast surgeon who comes down and does genetic counseling with our patients through Veritas. That's amazing. That's available. We've seen a ultrasound and other things jumping in that it's available. The ecosystem's billing out mostly because, again, the system's a mess, and many people are looking to say, boy, is there something over there? What's going on? Why are those people happy? Paid better. And seeing patients who are also happy, like that can't go wrong, as long as the government stays out of it for the next while. I'm going to say, but it's a growing thing, and I'm thankful for it. And I see gratefulness across the board here.
There's the old industry joke that when you walk into a medical conference, how do you know all the DPC doctors in the room? They're the ones smiling. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Zach, Dr. Cranney, Dr. Story, really appreciate your insight and your expertise here sharing with the group.